You know what my favorite thing about action role-playing games is? Picking up loot. It's just so fun. I wonder what it looks like in Path of Exile. Stop. Do you know someone who may be playing Path of Exile without a well-tuned loot filter? Do you see a streamer with a bunch of mirrors in their stash that are just still showing whetstones and orbs of chance? Well, then I have the series for you. Welcome to my first episode of a mini-series where I do a full nuts to bolts teardown of loot filters, how you can start setting it up, how you can transition it throughout the course of an entire league, and how you can tune it aesthetically and aurally to your taste, make it beautiful for you, and enjoy playing Path of Exile just a little bit more. On today's episode, we're gonna go over what is a loot filter, what does it look like inside, and why do you even use it? So get subscribed, ring that bell, and join me on the journey of beautiful aesthetic loot drops and smooth, wonderful mapping without distractions. Let's begin. All right, so like I said in the intro, this video is the very beginning of showing what a loot filter is. Throughout the course of the week, I will be going into lots more detail, but we're gonna start from the very beginning so people that are just starting with the game can kind of get an idea of what's going on, and maybe you'll learn something if you haven't even ever looked at a filter file. So what is a loot filter in Path of Exile? Filters help you filter loot. The way that Path of Exile works is so many items drop, like so many items drop, and the vast majority of them are garbage. And the way that they have the loot table set up is you just want as many items to drop to get the probability for better items to be found, and you're only going to want a very small subset of what actually hits the ground. So how do you sort through all of that? Well, there is a thing called a loot filter, and in fact, the game originally shipped without this at all. So it was just crazy. Your screen would get filled with garbage, and as we have killed more monsters and we get more quantity of items that drop, it's gotten way out of control, but luckily we can put a little handle on that by using loot filters. By default, files that you have on your computer, you will find them in Documents, My Games, Path of Exile. Then you have these files, these .filter files that look like this. And it looks like a mess of stuff, but it does make sense. Now, you don't have to know this. I actually have never really learned how to set all this stuff up, but it kind of makes sense. Like if we take an example here, it says show type rare shaper tier 12. Says the item has to have influence shaper, item level greater or equals to 84, rarity less than or equal to rare, which basically means anything except for unique. Base type, so this means for these specific types, this is filtering those things. And then there are different decorators to decide what it looks like. What is the font size? What's the color? What's the borders look like? And then what does it look like on the map? Are there mini map icons for it? Is it something that glows? Do we have a beam coming out of the ground? And stuff like that. Also, what sound effect does it play? At what volume does that sound effect play at? You can set up all these custom rules to make it as very specific as you like. And you can set that up so you can focus on getting the loot that you want to pick up. I killed a couple monsters in this map to show a little example. If we have no loot filter set up, and this is what it looked like at the, my little skit at the beginning of the video here, you'll see that so much loot drops, right? And the problem is, especially as you get later on in the game and you see more and more things and you are richer and you are killing monsters at a more rapid pace, A of all, you just can't see what's going on. It'll totally just get in your way. You can press Z to, temporarily turn that off and then turn it back on again. Most of this stuff is worthless, right? Like, you could argue, you could pick this item up and you could sell it for alteration shards, unidentified rare. However, is it worth me to take that extra time to pick up all these items, fill up my inventory, sell them for alteration shards later? Probably not. So what we want to do is not show regular unidentified rares, unless perhaps they have specific attributes like, are they influenced? Are they over a certain eye level? Do they have a really nice base type like a vermilion ring or something like that? And so we use a loot filter, as I showed in the file up there, to set it up. Now, the game also does ship with a default one. This is what the game ships with. It does a little styling. It hides a couple things. This is actually what's turned on when you originally install the game. It's okay. But as you can see, it still shows the vast majority of items. And it's, as you can tell, it's really, really hard to differentiate between stuff that we care about picking up and things that we don't want to pick up. And if you want to know like my personal preference for where I am in the league right now, if I go to my own custom loot filter, this is all that shows in terms of things that I even care about picking up, right? These are all the items that are actually on the ground. I can see all of them by holding Alt. So even if your loot filter is filtering those things out, you can hold Alt and then see what hidden right now. Like for example, maybe I want to pick up some portal scrolls or something, or some jewelers or alchemy orbs or something. But we're towards the end of the league. I have plenty of currency. I don't want to see those things. So by default, they are hidden. But if I really do need to see those things, or I'm just curious about how many things dropped, I can hold Alt and see that. All right, looks like Zeus wants to get out. Let's let the kitty outside. Oh, as usual, Zeus PKs me and gets me killed. That's a regular occurrence. So in addition to just showing or hiding things, as I said before, you can customize what they look like, what they sound like when they drop, and that can call your attention to certain items that you may care about more or less. I really tend to try to tune my loot filters as specifically as possible so that if there is a 0% chance that I will ever pick up an item, or just a very, very low percent chance, I like to filter those things out ASAP, because I think it's very important to just get through a map as quickly, as smoothly as possible and not get distracted by items. Even if you know you're not going to pick it up, just by having that thing show on the ground and get highlighted, it will be distracting. It will slow down your mapping. It'll just make mapping less pleasant, because you're going to instinctively, even if I see jewelers orbs or augments or something, especially if they're highlighted like that, I'm gonna think about picking them up. Even if I know I shouldn't, if they are not hidden, I'm gonna think about picking them up. I'm gonna pick them up occasionally. Also, you can accidentally pick them up. If I'm trying to walk somewhere, my click could turn into picking up instead of actually walking somewhere and attacking a monster. For example, I could be standing right here, and if I click over here, I'm actually just gonna walk a little bit and pick up the item instead of walking all the way over here. That can get you killed. There is actually a safety factor in setting up your loot filter to be as effective as possible. That's not really something that people consider a lot of the time. As usual, a big consideration is your inventory space. And that's another thing that we want to think about. You can make the argument that it's not that big of a deal to pick up items once in a while and get those extra alteration shards, but you can very, very quickly fill out your entire inventory, and the amount of time and thought that it takes to have to manually drop those and then do this to pick up something else and then drop this, pick something else up. It's really like, if you consider that running an entire map takes at most maybe about 2 minutes, that's even if you take 10 seconds to do that, that's a significant percentage of your time that is now becoming very, very inefficient for running a map and getting through there, making your currency. And for me, just enjoying the process of playing the game. I don't like playing inventory Tetris. It's not my favorite thing in the game. The more that I can just be running maps, killing monsters, and having a good time, the more fun that I'm having. And that is, at the end of the day, the purpose of playing a video game for most people, at least for me. So we went into the what is a loot filter, we got into the why is a loot filter, and now how is a loot filter? No one ever asked how loot filter is doing. I'm gonna get into a lot more detail about how to use Filterblade, how to customize things and all that, but just for the very, very introduction to folks, this is just how you get a loot filter set up in the first place. Basically, for anyone that has been playing the game for more than a couple days, you're gonna run across people recommending just get Neversink's loot filter, and it's really just best in class. And filterblade.xyz, that's the website. It is just the go-to place for interacting with loot filters in general. So we'll get into a lot more detail about using Filterblade a little bit later, but I just want to show what I recommend for getting started. Honestly, you can ignore basically everything for now. I would just go to download file, and do a zip of everything. This will, by default, download, as you can see, is generating all of the default filters. It has everything from loose to showing most items to very, very strict. And you can use that to work with whatever you want. And these default loot filters are very, very good for beginners to intermediates. And I recommend, honestly, just using them for a while, but then starting to delve into Filterblade and customizing a little bit later, as you'll see in our future videos. So as you can see, filterblade.zip is what got downloaded. It has everything from a soft up to an Uber plus strict filter. and everything in between. You want to unzip that, put that in Documents, My Games, Path of Exile, just drop them right in that folder. If you go to Options, Game, List of Item Filters, you'll see them all here when you unzip it. Now, if we want to get an example of what those guys look like, I recommend just going into a map, killing a handful of monsters to get like an example idea, and picking these different filters. So we can start off with soft. As you can see, it is showing just way too much. I wouldn't recommend this even for absolute beginner players. This is just, I guess, if you want to see basically everything and see what like the most basic loot filter can be. Regular is what, I guess this is what regular looks like. Honestly, I wouldn't even play like this. Unless you're in solo self-found, picking up rares, honestly, I just don't do it. I'm really, like solo self-found is a totally different thing, but rares in general are almost never going to be worth it. You know, maybe the first couple days of a league, you can get some upgrades here and there, but honestly, just a couple essences thrown at any base type, you're already going to be getting better items than your random rare on the ground. And that's just the nature of Path of Exile. If you go to semi-strict, you can see it hides some rares, probably just the very low level ones. We go to strict, it hides even more rares. In general, it's all about hiding worse and worse rares, starting to get to something that's not going to be too distracting as you're mapping around. Then we go to very strict, and as you can see, very strict hides basically all rares. Looks like it's going to be probably all rares except for very, very nice base types like Vermilion Ring, Shaper Influence, stuff like that. It's still showing Alteration Orbs. I kind of use Alteration Orbs as my touchstone for like, okay, how many exalts do I have in my stash versus is it worth picking up an alteration? So an alteration, when you can think of it, it's gonna be like either one 300th of an exalt to 1/600th. You're gonna want to check the economy. For me, I look at alterations and, you know, generally I don't want to pick them up as soon as I start having 20 plus exalts in my stash. We go to Uberstrict and it looks like it's hiding all rares. It's still showing splinters and some smaller, still showing fusing orbs though, which I find very, very interesting. And then we go to Uberstrict Plus. This one is hiding even skittering incubators. Skittering incubators are pretty good. This is strict on a level that I find to be, I feel like NeverSync made this one as a joke. I've never turned this one on before. That's pretty funny. All right, so that is just the pure, very basic intro to loot filters, how you can set up the very basic ones that NeverSync provides, have a little bit of an insight of what they are. Maybe you can even poke into your currently downloaded loot filter files, kind of learn a little bit, maybe get some ideas for things that you want to do there, and start making some additional progress towards just making Path of Exile a little bit smoother, a little bit more fun to play, and customize it for yourself. So thanks for watching this video. If you're interested in learning even more about loot filters and everything that you can do with them, customizing them, making them look and sound beautiful, definitely subscribe and stay tuned for the future videos in this mini series that will be coming out in the next couple days. Thank you and see you next time.